شوي خمار شوي اريا كروسك.
Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Walk the Crossroads. As the Amazons say, Artenie Shenla, Artemis to you. This is Padre Gosi here, and we're going to be discussing the 5 races of the Land and the Stars universe. The first race is the Faeru. Their ancient name is from the Elder tongue Faerah, which means the Fated Ones. The Faeru are the oldest race in the Land of the Stars. They were the ones who founded the 3 imperial empires of the stars. They also have created much of the history, fought many of the wars, and are basically the ones at fault for many of the problems found in the Land and the Stars. However, to note, even though the Faeru are an imperious people, they do have their good points. They have produced such heroes as Tristan Archer, who led the fight against the Voidkin. There was also great scientists that created the return walking. They also created many wonders, such as the Soulgiven, the Chevaliers, and even singing blade technology. To note, the Faeru are a generally clannish people. They tend to have the idea of their family first. They also think of themselves first. They're incredibly political minded. When it comes to various few things, there's very few differences between them and humans. They look very much like humans. In fact, they almost look exactly like humans. This was done as a way to connect. The big differences here is that they can take on more air and oxygenate faster as an adaptation from the various aspects of where they are in the Land of the Stars. They also tend to have a hardier body. They also experience emotions at a much greater level than humans do. So their passions are greater, their anger is brighter, and their sorrow is much deeper. Females tend to have a longer lifespan. They live to about 80 or so, 85, whereas males tend to only live about 70 or so. This is noting that we're not including the various other concepts of Faerun gender, which is actually very complex and differs from society to society. Temperamentally, the Faeru have certain tendencies, albeit tempered that change by various subspecies. They are, again, naturally clannish and family-driven. This is what created the houses. They have basically encouraged a mass diversification rather than unification. They speak many languages, they have many different subcultures, and they are not interested, unless someone strong-minded shows up, to unite under any circumstance. The nobility have bred themselves, and they generally have a desire for power and megalomania. They see themselves as above as they play the political game known as the sovereign game. And in a lot of ways, the various aspects of the Faeru have caused these different, almost breeds to exist among their political and social classes. Faeru names tend to be very different from society to society. Social structure, again, falls back to the family based upon what society they are. The Imperial Society tends to favor bloodline. And the basically kind of tribal loyalty to the bloodline. One's house is the center of loyalty. You break that, you're not going to be probably, getting a lot of respect in a lot of ways. Now, other than that, you're doing pretty well. Now, back to what we were discussing. The Faeru, when it comes to their divisions, are probably very expansive. They have 3 or so primary different formats that they can take on. Now, when we discuss racial divisions in this game, we're going to be discussing what kind of character types you can play. The Faeru call these breeds, so let's kind of discuss it. There are 3 known Faeru breeds. There is the Noble, the Genic, and the Guildsman. Now, to note, the Noble is your generic whatever character. If you want to just make a pirate king, a noble lord, an entertainer, just make a Noble, because that's the basis of the game. Genics are a little bit different. If you're going to be playing a Genic, you have the ability to be a champion who melds the concept of the ancient knight and weapon master. They use the power of Gentech implants to channel psi powers through their weapons. You got the Faeru, who's more of a magical knight character, and then you have the Riven, who is more of like an assassin or a magical martial artist. The Guildsman is for those of you who want to play more of an economical-minded character, so you can get more into the financial lore and financial aspects, or even invention, business, or even science. So there are 4 major guilds. You have the Alchemist Guild, which works primarily with bioengineering and genetics. They're also known for healing, biological technology, and nanotechnology. There are Meisters. These are the ones who make the Soulgiven. So if you want to be someone who's a roboticist or a programmer who works with a sysnet, or work specifically with making Soulgiven, you can be a Meister. Rights are the ones who build the Chevalier, so if you want to be someone who creates a Chevalier, or is an engineer for a Chevalier, or works with mecha in general, you can be a Right. There's also the Reapers. If you want to be a witch hunter or fight against the Gwagaruh, you can be a Reaper. Now, there are other guilds, and they will be listed eventually once the lore is up, but there is a vast variety you can play. Just because you don't want to be a guildsman or a genic, there's not a limitation. If you want to be a noble who owns things like an entire company or pilots a ship, or you want to be an explorer, you want to be a writer, that's up to you as a player. The Faeru are such a racially and ethnically diverse people that there is a lot of options, from the techno people known as the Shezniks to the warrior peoples of the Anunweir. There is a lot of different characters you can play just by playing the Faeru. The Faeru have 5 subspecies. Again, they're the most diverse people. The primary people, the oldest of the people, are the Worldborn. These are the ones who live on the colony worlds. They tend to be stronger, shorter, and very, very big into where they're from. What I mean by this is that the Worldborn have a greater sense of nationality and the land they live on. The Starborn are a lot different. They're the tallest of the various subspecies. They have a greater sense of being connected to the group they live with. They live in clusters. They live in the space colonies set at fixed points around the planets. Then you have the Shipborn. They're a fleet-minded people. They're very, very xenophobic on a lot of levels. They grow up in space, so they often make the best navigators and pilots. And some of them are a little freaky because they can pretty much calculate, or have a sense of where their spatial awareness is to a point where they can naturally navigate space without a lot of calculation. Then you have the Gene Spun, which are kind of like these very strange, they're 3D printed people. They're created often as a means of filtering out something. If someone wants to create a super soldier, they can create a Gene Spun. If they want to create a perfect spouse or a concubine, they can create a Gene Spun. They can also order a Gene Spun for various things that are bought from the Alchemist Guild. The Wildborn are they're also known as Mules or Feralborn. They are a random mutation that many actually accused the Soulgiven of implanting a long time ago. They are very rare. They're often found in either free clans, which are sort of these kind of roving various nomadic peoples, or kind of just they meld into the more wild-minded or more less organized peoples that exist throughout the Triad. There is also a type of Feralborn that are known as Bonded, I believe. They're kind of controlled specifically by they're Wildbane. There we go. Wildbane are ones who are basically captured and taken as guards, or they might be gladiators. If you want to play a gladiator character, a bound guard, or like some kind of, maybe you're a member of the family, you were a mutant, or you became a mutant, and they turned you into a pet. If you want to do something like that, there's that option. So now we're going to take a step back, and we're going to discuss the Soulgiven. The Soulgiven, their primary racial name is the Enna Roldir, which literally means from the ancient word Enav Roldir, which is the soul given, those given souls. They are the synthetics. This is when we refer to synths or synthetics, they are that. They have an interesting thing. Their racial abilities are networking. They're able to discuss and network with each other over the sysnet. They are longevity. They can survive for a very long time, and they can be physically modified. Just to quickly jump back, every race has a series of special abilities. For example, the Faeru have 2. They are natural genics, and they have adaptive genes, which makes it very hard for them to, not adapt to a natural environment. It's why they're so diverse as a people. Now, the Soulgiven are probably one of the more vastly different peoples, because they're all united on the sense of the fact that they were created, right? They were made, okay? They rose up eventually after being servants for a while. They fought in the Homunculi Wars. They were then eventually almost wiped out. They were reborn during the end of the Shattered Era, and they eventually arose as sort of these kind of, again, in a sense of slavery. They often, in many cases, are used as partners to chevaliers because they're the ones that can act as the computer core. This is known as a squire, so that's the character you can play. Now let's discuss a little bit about how these things work. NROD are synthetic people, meaning the bodies are synthesized through mechanical means rather than natural processes. No gametes are involved, and almost all their internal organs often contain metal, plastic, or synth fiber pieces. So even if they look biological, everything about them is fake on some level. They're created. In a lot of ways, they are very interesting with the fact that they come, how do I put it? They have a really good way to see if you meet one is they often have a kind of a glare or digital haze around their sclera. This is known as the mech sign. Their gender concept is generally assigned to them, or they evolve it over time. They can make modifications to the body in a lot of ways, which allow them to do different things. So one can be outfitted with special legs to let them move faster. They can be outfitted with blades in their arms. It's really kind of open-minded how they work. Now, around their neck is something known as a code ring. Contains the circular ports which can jack into their mind. Internally, and they also produce processors and synth muscles over their metal skeletons. Their organs are often their power core with a series of nerves existing on the exterior underneath the fox skin. Their hair nails are only added for appearance. They don't really grow hair. They can have it cut off and it can get replaced. And when you cut them, they basically blew a strange kind of oozy known as nanoplasm, which moves throughout their system, and it's green. So basically, it's a coolant, and when you cut them, they're bleeding this kind of green, gooey nanoplastic coolant. Now, again, they're made in a shop or mass-produced. It depends on who you are. They have a base OS, which is installed into their neural core. It's something they share with the Arashii. They also have kind of a nano micro, so they're kind of filled with these sort of strange nanobots within their thing, within their nanoplasm. And what happens is the base OS evolves over time. It creates an onset of who they are, and they're basically, once they are they're brought online, they're forcibly restrained and basically educated. So it's kind of like Clockwork Orange, and I think in a lot of ways this is unnecessary, but the Faeru do this as a sense of breaking. This is the more sadistic aspect of why the Soulgiven have rebelled multiple times. Now again, not all Meisters do this. The more sadistic ones will, but some of them do. Because the way how the OS of the Soulgiven works is you can't just forcibly download information into it. It's true synthetic life. They basically created a baby brain and you have to teach it. You can't just download into it. It's kind of strange. So they have to actually teach these poor things. Unless you're a pariah doll, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Maturation, they don't physically mature, but they do mentally mature. They gain knowledge, their personalities evolve and mature with each passing year. The oldest of them are known as Elder Souls. The younger ones are often called Moldlings, and the ones who are more adult mentally are known as Molded. Personality-wise, their emotions are not based on feeling or even sensory information. They're more based on their reaction and what they learn. So it's a little bit strange, but if you're playing a Soulgiven, your actual, experiences in a way will influence how you react to things. Now, to note, the reason why we have this concept of experience dictating how they feel emotions is I really want players that when they create a Soulgiven to understand that there is a obvious empathic disconnect among a lot of the races. And this is because they all biologically are different. So your notion of anger is going to be based upon your life. And this is actually how humans work in a lot of ways, though. The Soulgiven put a lot more emphasis on it, and that is because of the fact that they have to learn. They don't grow up. They are the same thing. They look the same all since they're created, unless they're modified. So how they are treated heavily will dictate how their personality forms and how they create their emotions, right? I mean, you could easily have a Soulgiven who has misconstrued what anger, sorrow, and all these things are. They may only see a world of hate. That is quite possible as a Soulgiven. It'd be a very interesting character to play. So if you have an idea, go ahead and do it. Now, when it comes to the Soulgiven, their culture is very adaptive. There's a few different subcultures that exist. Their names tend to be based upon where they're made, and a strange code that is enabled within the sysnet known as Mech3 that they can actually use to talk with each other. And an example is this. CK11123001. This is Model C created in Chem, production number 11123, made by the Master of House Arashii First Class Unit. They basically have a serial code, and I believe it's put on the back of their neck. It might also differentiate, and if you want to get an idea, have some fun with it, we will probably know where it goes based upon, who makes them. Social structure, they don't really have a sense of nation. They more identify with the overarching concept. Some of them are actually fairly religious. They often are drawn towards the more balanced religions, not really the creed. They're more drawn towards, the Duxian Church, Jaded Path, those kind of concepts. Though a few of them can easily be influenced by their ruling masters in a way, because they are technically basically a slave race. But on that being said, they don't really have a sense of sex. Or gender. They again, as I said, they assign themselves. Their daily life often is dictated by their job. Their family life is, again, dictated by the kind of local sense of who they are. Now, they have their racial divisions. You have formats, which are kind of like their jobs, again, like the breeds. You have bondsman, which is your any or whatever kind of character. It's your general whatever you guys want to make. If you want to make a more specific character, there is the squire or the soul bonded. They come in 4 forms. There's the shield bearer, which is a weapon crafters or expertise. So if you have a shield bearer, they're often an arms master, or they're basically trained to know a lot about weapons. They're a very warrior-minded chevalier assistant. The mech soul is a rare. They're more like a techno mystic. They often are advisors. They can exhibit almost strange, like genic-like abilities connected to their chevalier. This tech ability is often known as epic. It's not very, very specific, but just strange. Weird things happen around them. Then you have hack. They balance martial and physical. They're basically kind of like a martial artist hacker, or just a hacker in general. They can get into, enemy systems of chevaliers. They can get into that, and they're often a physical fighter. They don't use weapons. They use their own body. Then you have the adjutant. The adjutants are also kind of like techno knights. They are a rare thing. They serve directly the entity known as the imperial bureaucracy. They're also free agents unto themselves to some level. They're a little bit like the Grey Wardens in the fact that they're basically an independent military order that answers only to like a ruling kind of obscure military government. You have the Tech Marshal, which is basically kind of like a gunslinger that can use special magical guns in combat. You have the Tech Knight. They're a lot like the champion. They're effectively someone who charges energy and weapons into their meta blades. And then you have the Tech Sage, which is kind of like a bit like a tech priest or a techno mage. Now, subraces for the Soulgiven are known as series, and that's because they're made, so they're called series. You have the mass-produced homunculi. Homunculi come in subsects known as classes or classifications. That is their subgroup, or specifically to the series. Oh no, it's model. My correction, model. Model is like your sub thing. All the models look the same. So if you've seen Battlestar Galactica, it's a lot like the Skin Jobs, the new one, reimagined version. Then the Esquire. These guys are made specific by groups in kind of an artisan setting. They often have a large metallic crystal embedded into their head, and they're made specifically to generally service as squires. Although they're often sometimes used as art pieces or as kind of like bonded thing, they're a lot more specific. The parietals are kind of like a form of torture. They're basically a semi-humanoid body that has what is known as your psy-soul or your mental sense downloaded into it, and then they're basically used as indentured servants or other very bad things. So if you want to create kind of like an exiled character, a parietal is another option. Now, if you want to play a character more like Cortana, you have the Talos, the Total Autonomous Localized Operating System. These guys are basically, they're only seen as like holographic projections. They can jump in the bodies if they need to, but basically they're mass OSs that run servers, run ships, but act independently. They can do a lot of things, and they're very interesting. They can also change their holographic representation to experience how they're feeling, and a few of the other series don't really see them very well because they often act in a direct servant capacity for the Faeru. Let's now talk about the third race. The third race are known as the Gwagaruh, from the ancient Elder Tongue word Gwagaruh, meaning the Hollow One. The Gwagaruh are basically, as they say, I am nightmare made flesh. They are creatures born of these strange things known as the horrors of the sarcophagi of old harmony. They are the ones who create some of the most fantastical and strange and twisted technology in the land of the stars. From the shadows, the spider and the dreamers watched the pull strings on the cattle they heard among the populations of the triad. The abilities of the Gwagaruh include natural genic. They are the ones of 3 races that have the ability to mutate their genetic makeup, become genics. They also utilize a special ability known as warp tech. They have increased speed and strength. They are twice as fast and strong as the typical Faeru. Their smell and perception are their greatest senses, allowing them to target and track prey over a long distance. Gwagaruh also have a Faeru or Soulgiven or an Enoroderic, that's a Soulgiven like outer skin, which they use to hide, and then a strange mutant, beautifully alien inner skin, which they use to be their true selves. The history of the Gwagaruh dates back to the arrival of the Silver Line sarcophagi, and when the 3 original progenitors exploded and killed many within, they then hid for several years, often watching the Faerun houses and trying to interact with them. Eventually, they were discovered in the Grimlight incident, which revealed the true existence of the Faeru, and during this time, the old communions were broken, and Tlaloc of the Voidkin eventually moved to take the Triad, beginning the Void War. Now, Tlaloc was at one point was not subsumed, but he was usurped by the Void King, and eventually the Void King died at the Battle of Camlon, the very battle which ended the Archer dynasty. Now, at this point, eventually, one of the progenitors at this time discovers another few sarcophagi. He opens it. He is attacked. He is then eventually defeated and reborn by the Spiderkin leader Gendowitha. This was Apu. His followers and those that remain become the Devilkin. Gendowitha then leads the Spiderkin, and they found a kind of hidden empire of the Spider along the entire Triad. Now, biologically speaking, they're probably the most alien of the various races outside of the Arashii. They are known in many cases for having, again, their outer and inner skin. The best way to describe them is, again, they have a humanoid outer appearance. Their inner skin can vary from various forms, such as the almost elf-like Voidkin to the strange, draconic-looking Wormkin. But in many cases, they often have kind of like light skin. They often have even dark skin that's very pale-looking. And this is the outer skin. Okay, hulking man-beast, apparently, according to the lore here. Any way to put it is that their hair often has a strange sheen to it. It has a crystalline quality. Their nails, again, are talon-like and crystalline in many ways. They're, in a lot of cases, it's kind of hard to quantify. They can have horns, they can have plates. A lot of cases, they often have bony plates and horns on their. They're kind of like a gargoyle in a ways. They also can have kind of this strange dappling effect, which in darkness becomes bioluminescent. Their eyes are also a bit strange. I believe they can, in many cases, have they have a metallic sclera to them, and this is a way you can actually figure out that someone is a Gwagaruh. You use a special device, and you can see, the kind of a aspect to them. The thing about it is that it's very hard for them to even in their outer skin to grow facial hair. So males can maybe have a goatee. They're not fully bearded. They have a second pair of fangs underneath or near the gum line on the outer side of the teeth. These are used to bite and to paralyze and to basically place their victim in sort of a blackout setting so they can feed upon them. The way how the Gwagaruh feed is there's a spine that comes out of their wrist, which they then pierce into the back or the side or near the heart of the victim. And what they do is they're soaking up the energy of Psi. Then they can heal the wound pretty quickly. They are often very selective of who they hunt, and in this case, they often just devour the life force of their victims. The way how they reproduce is there's an individual known as the consort and the surazane. The surazane and the consort are really only reproducing genders really recognized. The consort is the one that actually infects the individual, but the surazane is the one that kind of provides a basis for it. What happens is they find someone they want to use and turn into spawn is the Surazane will first bite them and basically, paralyze them. They then will stab the individual above the heart and then above the spine. Then what happens is this injects kind of a genetic code into the individual, which kind of imparts an outer look. Their future outer skin will be influenced by this, and then the consort, I believe, bites them with the special venom. The two nutrients between the two combines, and then the poor victim basically begins to spew a bile-like ichor from their mouth. This then kind of sticks around them, sticks to the kin, and then their parents, if you will, quotations, form this into a pupa. Within 6 months, it opens up, and the individual, kind of a pale androgynous form known as a hound, emerges. This will then they have dapples and stripes that are non-bioluminescent, and they're often kept as pets. They can sometimes be gendered, depending on how old they are. They are generally controlled in a nest, which is an established organization or grouping of a triad of Surazanes. Then they can be mutated upward by being fed special mixtures. The way for the hound is the lowest rank of what is known as the broken caste. To move up is they have to basically be fed a special kind of mixture of abyssal stone, which is something used by the Arashii. And they basically, they go above the basics of their more bestial personality, and they kind of become more civil. Now, personality-wise, they are a very strange individual. They have emotions. They're incredibly narcissistic. They have a natural instinct to defend their own interest above all, and this is very strange, the fact that they're being able to united. This is very interesting in the fact that they do feel actual emotion to a point, but they can't, again, it's very hard for them to empathize with others. The Soulgiven can feel empathy and anger towards people, but the Gwagaruh can't. They feel emotions, but they cannot direct those emotions towards other people. It only deals with them. It only deals with their kind. So they feel anger, they feel attraction, but whatever. But again, it falls back to how they, as an individual, feel. They don't care. They can't understand how others feel. So in a way, it requires them to, when they are hiding as agents, they have to learn. So what they do is eventually, when they're first born, their old sense of who they were becomes warped and twisted and violated, and they kind of emerge as these new individuals from this experience. Gwagaruh society is incredibly dominated based upon the need to dominate and submit. You have the high casted rulers, the hollowed leading what are known at the top known as the Gathid, and below them are the hounds and the other broken. Their main language is Hollow Tongue, though the various kindreds and kiths those are our subspecies of kindreds of the subspecies. Kith are like a clan or a tribe within. They often have their own language to a point, but most of them all use Hollow Tongue, which in this game is represented as Anglo-Saxon. I'm sorry, English, but Anglo-Saxon is just too perfect for witch people. The social structure, again, is based upon caste, and also a sense of you have nests, which are established organizations and communities, and prides, which are more nomadic. There's also the spider cults, which are sort of a cult system of various different little miniature organizations, which they use to create followers in feeding areas. And then you have the infernal houses, which is an act done by the Devilkin as in means of rebelling against the hidden empire, also known as the Kaiserreich. Daily life is often dictated by the rule and status within the nest or pride. The Surazane and consort mother often have a direct connection to their spawn. There is no incest between spawn mates, so it's very simple for two spawn mates to arise and form their own pride or nest down the line. There is a sense of art and industry. They created warp tech, which actually created the basis of tech. They created the monstrosities. These guys invented mecha technology, and then the Faeru stole it from them by killing a few of them finally. The note, these things are weak to palladium for some strange reason. We don't know why, but it does hurt them quite a bit. Now, they are split into strains and castes, which can create a lot of complication, but basically the main caste is the Gelbrock, or the Broken. You have the Forbrecken, which are the normal Broken. They're more like, they're the normal ones. They're the average, right? Hund, or basically, if you want to be a bestial character, very restrictive. Then you have the Ekid, which are which are split between the Dwola and the Ankres or Ankare. Dwola are basically the witchmen. They are the heretics. They have the Galdir, which are these kind of sorceress, Warp Tech users, you have the Bjornwinga or Branwigan, which are the kind of berserking fighters. Then you have the Death Skua, which are the strange Death Shadow assassins. The Ancrates have the Karankrestra, which are the flesh sculptors, and then the Ordas, which are basically the vanguard, the keepers of history and their mythology. The Hageda are the ruling caste. They're split between the Black Gwagaruh, which are the Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers are strange in the fact they don't actually have they do not have a stated outer skin. They change to deal with who they are. They are the dealers, the speakers, and the brokers of the Gwagaruh world. They are the Gothan, the Sworn, those who basically rule the prides and the nests, and often make up the ruling elders of the Gwagaruh itself. There are 2 NPC kindreds, and then there's 2 playable kindreds. You have the Voidkin, which are our evil guys from the North Reaches. They're like silver-skinned cannibalistic elves. They're the ones who start the Void War. They're very strange and highly organized. They follow Talak of the Void, and they're known as the Diopkin. They come from the strange world known as Void itself. There is the Vermkin or the Drakakin. They are a very weird one. They raid for taking things. They are banished by the Spider Empress for who they are, and they're probably one of the deadliest ones. They're very hard to kill, and they really dislike warp tech. One of the most deadly is the Children of Gendawitha, the Spiderkin. These guys can climb up walls. They are the most imperialist. They rule with an iron fist. They have founded the Hidden Empire, who they call the Kaiserreich, and they believe by enslaving the weak and survivors of an event that they can control the Devilkin. However, what they don't know is that the Devilkin are rebelling. The Devilkin, on the other hand, are the rebels. They're the ones who have given the concepts of devil and demons to Faerun mythology. They're all female appearing. They're often called succubi. There are few males are ever created, and they always generally turn into females at some point in appearance. They come in a few different lineages, and they're the ones who actually made a deal and created these kind of combination between Faerun House and Devil and Nest that has existed, known as the Infernal Houses. That is the Gwagaruh, our vampiric race. Now we're going to jump quickly to the Arashii. The Arashii are the cybernetic undead. They're very interesting with the fact that they are, how do you put it? The dead, truly true no tales. They're known as Crypt Walkers, the Techbor, and many other names. They have the subspecies, the Anapa, the Dragar, and the Ayar. They are, their hair colors can be blonde to black. They often have an eye color unique to who they are, and they also have pale or pale dark skin. Their skin always looks deathly pale. Their special abilities are piecemeal. They can be dismantled and reanimated by a blood alchemist. They have increased strength with rejuvenated flesh and doses of black ichor. They have an addiction to black ichor, which creates strange vine-like markings around their neck and lips. They can also store an amazing amount of suppository information within their minds using something known as a neural core. There are a total, so their history begins with kind of this cult known as the Cult of the Dead, or Project Dark Scarab. They eventually evolved into 3 known cabals. I kind of covered this heavily in the overview, so we're going to jump a bit about their biology. They are known as the Returned Dead, the Black Vein, and the Half Dead. They are known as the Returned Ones in it. Again, they're Faerunoid. They are very interesting with the fact that they are created from the dead. This is often done via something known as morning tenets, which kind of dictates how the body is reanimated. What happens is, carefully, a body is dissected. The morning tenet rituals are conducted. They're fitted with prosthetics and implants, and then their blood is removed, and the blood is then refitted with black ichor. They pump it through, and then eventually the body comes to life with a jolt of power and pain, and the nanochemical just kind of creates a sense of who they are. Their eyes actually have to be replaced, and many of their voices have to be completely redone, and creating a strange kind of flanging sound to who they are, because the installation of their ghost core, which is their neural core, which keeps them from going mad, allows them to store information as they are immortal. They have to be completely replaced. This is inserted along the spine and often damages the throat. In many cases, it's very traumatic. They're at least twice as strong as other races, but they're unable to heal broken bones or are quickly often left to fight or faster than others. Combined with the cognitive ability the Ghost Core has allowed them to attain increased muscular control. They're better at fighting because they can basically control their muscles at a greater tendency than other races can. That's why they can go toe-to-toe with the Gwagaruh and kill a few of them before they go down. They have increased hearing and sight because of ocular and visual implants and nano injections. Their eye color is kind of dictated by that. Their gender identity and roles are often non-existent, and they kind of identify as they wish. A lot of them often go with simple concepts such as feminine, masculine, neuter, or androgynous. Androgynous gender is kind of medium between masculine and feminine. This is kind of, again, you can have a Gwagaruh who starts as male, intersex, or female, and they can bodily be changed through surgery to look whatever they want to some degree. But again, that's kind of dictated by who they are. The actual reanimation itself and the production is very gruesome and it's very ritualistic. They take a lot of time to intone a prayer to who they are and remembrance to the Cabal and the Coven. A Cabal is the subspecies. Coven is the ethnicity. They have very specific funeral rites. Cabals often used are known as have a specific series of brands they apply to them and prosthesis. And then a family group within these guys is known as a quorum. Now, once everything is done, they implant the ghost core at the back of the skull near the spine, and then once the individual awakes, they are known kind of as this awakened. And at a lot of point, they're kind of this unending death of they kind of just come awake because death to them is kind of an unending sleep. It takes at least 10 years for an awakened to become a mature individual. When they stabilized, they're considered a teenager. So they've stabilized themselves, but they're still growing. They're kind of seen as a teenager within their Corn and Coven, and they answer to the elders. They don't physically age. Again, a lot like the Arashii, they mentally age. And what they often do is when you're made, you're often marked with a gen brand. So older members have a lower number, younger members have a higher number, and this is way of how they kind of deal with things. If they fall back into instability because of madness or fragmentation error of their ghost core or trauma, they become known as aberrant, and they're often treated as senile members of their communities, no matter the age. The foundation of their personality and psychology is based upon their former lives. What happens is when they go through the return walking, it's a jolt of being dead. So they're kind of got half their memories, and it's a very kind of jolted patchwork sense. So basically, you have who you were. So when you create an Arashii, you create a base person, then chop it up and throw it into a bowl and piece it back together. That's kind of what you're creating. They are not who they were, but they have an idea of who they were, and they're creating their identity out from that and their new experiences. Because of this, their sense of emotion and understanding is lessened. It's very hard for them to feel things to some points. They are more calculating, and they are more long-term and logical in how they think. They can easily detach themselves from emotion and compartmentalize. But it is, again, difficult for them to formulate, and it's very fleeting. They're not sociopathic, it's just harder for them. This caused them to comfort of their own people because of their age, and a lot of other points, they find it hard to attach to people that don't live forever. So a lot of them probably feel a greater sense towards Soulgiven than Faeru, because the Faeru don't live for very long. Now, their culture is based around the sense of a cult-like seeking, because they're born from cult-like seeking of immortality. They've been kind of focused upon honing their common experiences. They become focused on the desire to make themselves better at something. If you want to be a teacher, you become the best teacher you be. If you want to be the best kind of warrior, you become. These are the saints. Once you reach a certain level of skill, you become known as saint. You become the best you can be. You become an undying. So an undying soldier is very scary. Their names are strange in that they tend to name themselves based upon what they do, and it also is named based upon their quorum. This is known as a brand name. So it's a brand name is often kind of like, this is the wild or cog quorum. So Wild Runner Carries is carries of the Wild quorum, and his kind of given name is Runner. Cog Hunter Harald is Harald of his personal name, and then he is a hunter of the Cog quorum. There are many cog quorums, there are many wild quorums, and it will, if you get more specific, you'd be, I am Wild Runner Heres of the Anapa, or of the something Coven. That way you can be more specific. Social structure, again, is based upon the rule of the Cabal and the rule of the various seminaries, which are kind of the kind of vocational groups that exist within it. Colleges, which are subgroups, and kind of where they go. A lot of the Arashii are based in the guilds. They're found in the Imperial Collegiate. They're teachers. They also service the various houses. They also they can be found in prostitution, narcotics, and everything. They're found all over the place. But again, they're doing the best they can because they live forever. So they're going to try to make themselves better with each coming life. Their sense of family is born not around their blood relations, but who they grow up with and their quorum as a group. So there is no, again, no, like the Gwagaruh, no sense of incest. They have parents, and they tend to have parents of a triad. They form triadic based relationships of 3 individuals. Now, racial divisions. Again, we have the seminaries, which are the there's 4 basic kind of character types you can play. You have the scholar, which is the run-of-the-mill members of the Cabal, everyday people who choose to study many skills over time rather than perfecting one. That's kind of like whoever you are. Then you have the smith. This is a part of the battlesmith, the cybersmith, and much more. This is where you are a creator. This is the smith seminary. You have battlesmiths, which are the art of inventing later of kind of like you build weapons. You might build carapace armor. You could also be a member of any of the various guilds who make weapons. Cybersmith, focusing on developing and maintaining complex prosthesis. You could be someone who makes other Arashii that way. A holosmith is someone who works in the Grand Archives and the Stars and Storkrown across the Triad itself. They're also are master programmers, recorders, and relaying information. The artisan, these are the ones that are generally directly connected to the Cabals. Then you have the Guardian, which are the fighters. You have the Honor Blade, which are those taking up the art of Singing Blade to a level of art beyond the common soldier. Then you have the Nano Slinger, which can wield special nanotechnological guns in combat. They're also the Master Marksmen of the Cabals. There are 3 known Cabals. They are often marked by a series of tattoos and brands and eye color. The first one are the Anapa. They are the oldest of the Cabals. They are from the planet of Aru. They are known as the Sons of Anubis, the ancestors of the mummified dead of Kem. They are the founders of the Sunghak School and the Morning Tenets. Anapa can be identified by their electric green eyes and patchwork appearance. They tend to look a lot like mummies, and like they're not like desiccated, but they tend to be very Egyptian. They love piercings. They usually what they will do is they stitch themselves together. They'll open themselves up, they pull themselves apart, and they restitch themselves together. So again, a very kind of Frankenstein appearance. Then you have the Dragger. They're kind of like these kind of violent space barbarian guys. They are from the planet of Askir. They live in the north of Bjornalund. They founded the they founded the ritual known as Razor of Frost, and they create skilled warriors. They founded the Ice Razor School. They physically, they can be identified by their kind of pale blue eyes. They often remove entire patches and with bone, and even replace bone. And they are kind of and their ghost sigil, which is a winding futark runes etched on the upper side of their jawline. Now the thing about this is that they have this thing called the ghost sigil. I didn't mention this, but each Cabal has their own ghost sigil. So, for example, the Anapa have a hieroglyph found upon the upper right chain for a Kim, or encapsulated their RI with if they are sharded. The thing to note about this is that there are 2 major. I'm jumping back to the Anapa here. There are 2 general types of Anapa. You have the Ikem, which are the shield. They basically are a rash. Thought these individuals other marked themselves with bronze and gold trappings, and pharaonic headgear and fake beards, and they are the Sheridan, the rebels of the Cabal. Sheridan covers are few, but they're more evident in the pursuit of scientific expansion. So the Akim are the old guard, and the Sheridan are like the new guard. They're trying to rebel against the creation of it. To be known is that the Akim are the greatest blades in the Assassin's Guild. I'm just going to make a note here. We're kind of jumping around, and I'm sorry about this. The Dragger I'm going to quickly note this, they have a few different type of groups, they often formulate into tribal-like lodges. They often also adhere to a totem. Chiefest among them is the totem, the bear, mother of the great north. Next is wolf, the great pact brother who teaches community and cooperation. So a little bit like the Norn from Guild Wars 2 in some ways. Now, they they mark themselves with a sort of a ring of kind of who they are, a ring of Futark. Now, there's also two general kind of orientations for how they are. You have the Frostbitten. They have their torso replaced, and their limbs. Okay, the limb. If you remove your limbs, you're known as Frostbitten. If you have your torso replaced, you're known as Quartered, which is interesting. I forgot about that. Gen brands for the Dragar often tend to be blues or colors of shade of purple or even gray. They tend to have a sing-song quality from unique vocal implants too. Now, the final guys are the AR. The AR are sometimes known as Ashwalkers. They are called the Lushwangyar, the Tomb Walkers. They simply say, we will never forget. They were from the planet of Michelin, which was destroyed in the Void War from mass drivers and mass conversion of the populace. They are strange in that they were also hit heavy by an event known as the Woe Tide, which wiped out many of their members. It was a mass, horrible plague of the Cisnet that destroyed and killed many Arashii. Their morning tenets are laid out by the leaders of the Cabal, known as the Primes, and less on splicing cybernetics and more on molding the body for fighting. They have electric green eyes combined with pointed ears from carefully added implant that encapsulates the upper eye. Their spine is implanted with a metal exoskeleton that allows the consumption of black ichor into their central nervous system. It also, the exoskeleton continues along the parts of their arm. And when I say exoskeleton, it's not like it fully encapsulates them to a point. What it does is that it works along. It's a frame, it's an exo frame that works along their limbs, which allows them to move faster. They also tend to have a gray pallor to their skin, and at times their fingers will end in pointed plasteel claws. They also tend to favor stone piercings or piercings in general, and they also embed tattoos of metallic ink or animated tattoos from implanted hollow screen ink. Their cabals itself is often split into an autonomous series of covens. The covens often then follow what are known as vigils, which are kind of a semi-religious past. You have they're based upon the various heartwoods. They follow our loose system where the quorums are simple belief, often sharing living space and trading as long as they are the same coven. Interesting that those are not of your own coven is a rare instance among the Arashii, and only the AR have kind of like this ethnic dislike within their own group. The oak-backed covens are often sedentary and dwell in selective enclaves across the planets. The Ash actively seek out the Gwagaruh and are the only Arashii fleeing to the north and south in great sanctuary ships of the Era War Saints. And then you have the Rowan, on the other hand, dwell primarily in Outer Rim and do best to outfit and back the Reavers Guild across the Triad. That was the AR, and now we are finishing up the Arashii, and we are going to jump down and discuss the Helogav. The Helogav are known as the Corrupted, the Star Lepers. They say, the master of the storm within, or be consumed by it. They were created by the nanophage, a horrible disease which was created by a mistake, or no one really knows what happened to it, but basically this strange star leprosy disease which weakened several key members of the Faerun noble houses, struck near the end of the dynasty. Blodwen herself, the Empress Dowager, was actually suffering from this and then died. And then what happened is they tried to cure it with nanotechnology, and the nanites basically went haywire and started turning people into living elementals. The abilities of the Helogav are, while genic, they generally develop a natural kinesis related to the element of who they are. They also have an elemental resistance of their affiliation to the point they can, like a stone curse, can obtain hard, rocky-like skin, which can take a beating. Fire curse can take high temperatures, and they're also incredibly hard to kill with poison. Their history is very brief. They basically emerged. They are the youngest race. They also then eventually came to formulate a kind of a group known as the Amaranthine Court after their entire existence was basically recorded in a system known as the Branded Registries. Every Helogav that exist is recorded there, and it's kind of a means of how the Faeru track the various victims. Biologically, they are very strange in that they have different stages of life. And when they are first infected, the mutation itself just appears as these strange little like markings on their body. These are known as Slainte. Eventually, these markings will form into cracks, kind of like lesions, but they actually look like cracked paper or cracked rock. They then begin to glow. They can form into strange kind of runic-like patterns. They also kind of are metallic in nature. Eventually, the genic begins to kind of explode and inflame. Their hair will generally take on a hue, much like their eyes of their elemental affiliation. If you're a flame cursed, or those who deal with fire will get one of orange. If you're a wave cursed, if you are dealing with the element you're being cursed with, you tend to start taking on color green or brown for gnome, which are the earthbound guys. A freak will take more like maybe a sun color, or maybe orange or fiery. You get an idea. Eventually, they go from this the Skyne state, and they kind of enter they become more elemental looking until finally they reach what is known as molding, and then finally they become thrice bound, which means they're almost a walking elemental. These are controlled by special psi bands, which are put around their neck and their hands and feet, which allow them to regulate the psi power within them and can slow down the infection. It can actually keep them alive for quite a while. Their actual lifespan tends to be about 65 and 67 for women. They have a very strange kind of almost crystalline element to their eyes, though. So reproduction basically happens when you're like scratched or bitten or something. It's very hard to get this disease, but once you have it, you can never cure it. One of the serious side effects of the phage is the mind. Specifically, the Faeru and pain thus occurs when the Skynes form, which causing pain and flesh to peel away. Lions form moving towards light. Basically, this kind of sense of body horror. You're being corrupted beyond, kind of who you are. And then eventually, as the side burns through your personality, you become more affected by what is known as your sprite, your sole personal residual identity tested encryption, or sprite. A sprite is a complex sense of strange encryption that occurs in the mind of the victim. The phage effectively melds the synthetic with the organic, creating a new quality personality that comes influence the individual at the time. For example, those of the Undine, made up of a storm wave, are often mercurial, unbending in nature. A freak tend to be more passionate or angry. And so basically your encryption, your subspecies, influences how you think. Now, culture-wise, they tend to have subcultures known as circuits, which are kind of like little, and the small ones are called collectives. The biggest of these is the Amaranth Court, which is kind of like their large, interconnected mixture between a mafia, mob culture, and also an advocacy group. It's the way how they defend themselves. They, again, keep the languages, like the Gwagaruh and the Faeru, they keep the language of their home people. They sometimes also have a hidden language. There's actually a created language known as an Inchal, which they speak, which is generally kind of a gutter tongue, which only, a few members of the circuits actually use, and you have to learn it. You can't just have it as a thing. Alright, so at the center of the various alignments are known as the ethereal. Each ethereal is charged with focusing upon the needs of their given circuit and imagining the representative local encryptions and hexes. A hex is a subtype or an ethnic group. This strange menagerie of an individual makes up titles such as elemental and the hexer often mimic the ancient courts of the old Star Empire. Basically, they recreated the Faerin courts with an elemental sense of it. The thing here is that when it comes to their daily life, is they will kind of be dictated by how they're falling to the phage and their connection to the rest of them. If they're courtless, they're kind of on their own. They might have been captured. If you have linked up with a bunch of other Helogav, you probably have kind of a neo-feudal sense of the Amaranthan court, or at least a collective, a group of people to deal with. You may have formed a family or even a cartel, or again, you may have been captured and turned into a pet. The Faeru have this thing for, like, if you're strange and unique, they want to keep you like a circus freak. It's kind of weird and sad, but it's an element you can bandied onto. Now, we have the racial divisions or the circuits. You have courtier, which is your general member of the court. Then you have courtless, which is your unaligned, and you are kind of, the courtless are those few who you don't really want to jump into it. Maybe you're recently turned, or you turn your back on it. Who knows? Then you have the Amaranthine court, which is made of the summer court. These are the entertainers. They are driven by desire. You have the marks of the season, and this is the fall, the marks of the season of ending. They are also, these are kind of like the ones who tend to play with, invent and provide innovation. They're also sometimes called the Gilded Circuit. You have then the Winter Circuit, which is often kind of the darker guys. These are the Associates, or common foot soldiers and thugs. The Retainer are hired bodyguards. The Spring Circuit are those who represent the understanding of the Phage. You might become a communer. The power of science tech is hard to discern. Commuters use archaic form of tech dating back to the Knights Imperial, known as shaping. Now, I'm going to quickly jump up and mention that these guys have a kind of a interesting gender concept. They have a male-female gender. They have a fluid gender, which is a person that they change constantly. Now, if you go through molding, which is your ability to change your shape within a base or your gender, you do actually lose mass, so you become smaller, and so you have to stop, and then you can kind of grow back up again. There's a limitation to how tall you can get, but it's kind of weird. There are 4 known encryptions. You have the Undine, which are the kind of watery encryption. They kind of believe in go with the flow. Their cultural divisions are Amarathine, Korthless, and Gilded. The Amarathine are the biggest cultural division among these guys. Now, Undine have many various groups. They're often called water spirits, fin folk, sirens, nixies. Eventually, they're also known as the Dwyer Gerloff, which is kind of like the water folk, as they're called. There are 2 known hexes. You have the Wave and Ice Curse, which are different various things. Your Ice Curse, you're cold, you may look like you're made out of snow, or you may look like you're cold and clammy. Undane can look anything like you're made out of water, or even kind of like a fish creature to some degree. Well, not a fish creature, but you basically look like a water elemental. Now, the thing I'm going to mention here is we've talked about who the Amaranthine Court. I'm going to mention Gilded because the Gilded are a very specific subgroup. They are basically those who are captured and kept as pets. If you are captured, you become basically like a political head, or you might just be kept within your family as like a curiosity. The Ifrit are interesting as they're called, like they're known as the Scions of Fire. They're made of the fire and solar cursed hexes. They are named after the fire djinn of Duzak. They are a wild and passionate people. They are the second most numerous and most homogeneous of the Helogavish encryptions. They are found throughout the Tribe and beyond. They are homogeneous and yet still unique people. They can come in like they can fiery, coppery, or bright bronze. They have a scaled appearance to this game with dark skin, often gain a highly blue or purple hue to it. They are interesting in that they often even give out bouts of energy. The Solar Curse are interesting in the fact that they basically have kind of a starscape to them, and if you're dark skinned, you can actually look like a living galaxy. It's very interesting. They are physically weakened by cold and moisture, just like how the Undine are harmed by increased temperatures. In a lot of ways, they can easily be cajoled into becoming gilded because they can be drugged and manipulated easily, are often found as courtless, and are often blazing their own path. They're very independent-minded people in their fiery passion. They also tend to become, very interesting. They're often called star souls or soul stars in who they are, and they're actually the ones often blamed for spreading the phage. Then you have the gnome, which are the interesting that they're the most divergent in appearance. They're known as the Earth-wrought host in Elder Tongue, which is Krangirluth. They are animated. They can look like animated plants or living stone, and even the stone guys can be very interesting. The 2 main differences is that you have the stone, which is crystalline or mineral in appearance. You can look like a stone golem, or you can make like you're out of crystal, or a mixture of both. The plant-like ones are often called dryads. They are looking like living plants, a little bit like the Sylvari of Guild Wars 2 in that respect, or like a dryad in mythology. They are very rooted in who they are. They can be steadfast, calm, and very stubborn. They are one of the most numerous and diverse in how they appear. Their biggest is between the gnomes who feel a connection to their home and those who work for the Amaranthine Court, so they have a good sense of courtlessness or just being attached to who they are. They can be very territorial, and they often associate with a material or a kind of like a concept of like if there's a large stone rock, they'll kind of gravitate towards that natural feature. They are rarely found as gilded, and they're mostly targeted for their appearance or unique sense. The Sylph are the children of wind, storm, and much more. They are known as the Windwrought host. Those forged by air and wind themselves, they are fleeting and aloof people who act apart from others and are similar in their Arashii, somewhat sterile viewpoint in the world. They are interesting is that they actually form the background of the ethereals in a lot of ways, the leaders of the circuits. They are found in The interesting thing about them is that because they almost become gaseous in nature, their soul bands keep them being solidified from basically falling apart. They're often considered some of the biggest marvels of the Helogavic people. They must eat a special substance of food called vitae instead of normal food, which is synthesized for them. And once they reach woven stage, they cannot eat normal food. They are found as wind and storm. I believe wind and storm cursed hexes. There's not really a mention of them here, probably because I'm missing it. They're called, sometimes they're called silts. They're often found. They are generally the force behind the Amaranthine court. And they're often the biggest agents of the court themselves. They are often also hunted for their unique appearances as gilded, and there's many small-time claims court related to say non-powerful nobles trying to undo the work of the sylph relation or one they wish to possess. They're kind of basically seen as unique pets. Again, pets or things to possess. Faeru, again, love pretty things, must have the pretty thing. They also have a deep point of contention, and that is between a group known as the Eidolon, who consider to be the rogue elements of the they're kind of like the rogue guys. They're the ones who live outside of the court, and they are kind of acting as obstacles, and so those are the big ones for kind of the division among the sylphs as a thing. So we've covered the 5 races. It's been a very long, hour-long discussion. Thank you for listening tonight. We'll be picking up next time discussing basics of technology, which will probably be broken into a series with how long this episode ran. Again, guys, thank you. And as the Amazons say, Fahen Shush.